Let's take a closer look at the box model and adjust the border, padding, and margins. Here is VS Code with the Resume project open. Click Go Live to use Live Server and launch the browser. Let's make it full size. We'll start by looking at the browser's developer tools. In the browser, press F12 to bring up the developer tools. Then click the Elements tab. Here are the elements on the page. Let's navigate down to our skills, Main, Section, and select our repository paragraph. We see the selected element is highlighted in the browser window, showing us the box model for our element. The blue is our element content, and the tan is the margin. We don't see the border or padding because we don't have any border or padding set for this element. Hover over other block elements, and we see that by default, block element boxes are stacked on top of each other. Let's look at some inline elements, such as our anchor elements in the header. In the Elements tab, navigate down to our anchor elements, Header, Anchor. We see that these inline element boxes are stacked horizontally. Back in the Elements tab, pick the first paragraph element under the main element. In the right panel of the Developer Tools, scroll down to the bottom. We see a depiction of the box model for the selected element. It shows the content size and the top and bottom margins. It even color coordinates the parts of the box with the box shown in the browser. Very cool! Above the box, the tool displays the browser's applicable default styles. Note that the user agent specified here is referring to the browser's default styles. And above that are the styles we've defined. Any crossed-out styles were replaced with more specific styles. For example, we defined a margin for every paragraph element under the main element. The more specific styles associated with the paragraph element override the universal selector margin of 0. These tools can be very helpful when debugging styling issues. Let's leave the tool open while we try out some of the properties we just covered. And let's rearrange to display the editor and the browser side by side. In the index.html file, let's add a div element around all of our skills and set its class attribute to skills. Be sure to move the closing tag below all of our skills paragraphs, and I'll reformat. In the style sheet, declare a style using the selector for the class we just defined. Let's add a border only along the top. We'll set the border top width to 3 pixels and the border top color to dark slate gray to match our page header. Looking at the browser, we don't see any border. Recall why? By default, the border style is none, so it won't appear. Let's change the border top style to solid. And there's our border. For padding, we'll use the shorthand syntax and set the top and bottom padding to 5 pixels and the left and right padding to 0 pixels. In the Developer Tools Elements tab, navigate down to the section and click on the Skills div element. And let's scroll the browser up a bit. We see the padding around our content in green. Going back to VS Code, let's decrease the size of the web skills so it's more in line with the other skills. Change the font size from 2em to 1em. That looks better. But these skills are taking up a bit too much space. Let's change their margin. Remember how to change a style only on paragraphs within the skills div element? We add a combinator style, .skills p. We want a top and bottom margin of 5 pixels and a left and right margin of 8 pixels. If you want to try that yourself, stop the video now. Are you ready to see my solution? Here's my .skills P selector with my margin style rule. Looking in the browser, that looks a bit better. In the Elements tab, let's navigate down to the Skills paragraphs. Clicking on one of the Skills paragraph elements in the DevTools, we see the margin in tan, separating our skills paragraphs. To finish off our skills design, let's give our skills heading some style. In the index.html file, add a class to the skills h3 element and set it to section-heading. In the style sheet, we'll declare a selector using that section-heading class. We'll define rules to change the header to a better color, a sans serif font, and a larger font size, and change its margin. These are properties we've covered previously, so if you'd like to define them yourself, pause the video now and give it a try. Are you ready to see my result? I'll make the editor a bit wider. I set the color to dark slate gray to match our page header. I set the font family to the Arial stack, the font size to 32 pixels, and margin to 0px, 8px. Is that close to what you came up with? Now let's close the developer tools. Our resume is looking a bit nicer. On a real resume, we'd want a consistent font and color for our skills, but we'll leave them as is for reference. There is one more change we should make. We used a border top property to set this border as part of the skills class selector. Let's instead move that to our heading. I'll cut the border properties from here and paste them here. Whoops! We now need to change from border top to border bottom. Defining it in the heading makes it easier to design a consistent heading as we add more resume sections. Now let's go back to the slides. So, the box model in CSS defines how each element is displayed on a page. The content is the actual content of the element, such as text or an image. The border defines the edge of the element's box. Set the border width, color, or style. By default, the style is none. The padding is the space around the content within the element's box. Set the padding amount on the top, right, bottom, or left. And the margin is the space around the element outside the borders of the element's box. Set the margin amount on the top, right, bottom, or left. Use the browser developer tools to examine and debug CSS box model styling issues. Next up, let's look at how to align content, including centering. Was this video helpful? If so, please like and subscribe.